An artist and a scholar, and I mainly work with the relation of body, sound, and technology. So now this talk is going to be an artist talk with a little bit of contextualization on some of the underpinning ideas behind my work. I will not have the time to elaborate too in depth about these ideas I'll share with you, but there are several publications on my website, and I will be still around here tonight, so if anybody is interested in that part of the work, please don't hesitate. So, I'm going to start from rituals. This is a ritual of purification that's called skin cutting, and it is performed in several parts of the world. In Papua New Guinea, where this tribe is from, in some part of Africa, and also in some part of South Asia. So these tribes are the Kanigaras, and as you can see, the ritual consists in cutting the skin according to a certain pattern. But another part of the ritual, which is equally important, is also how the wounds then heal. And by healing with certain herbs that they prepare, eventually they become a little bubble on the skin. And following those patterns, the whole skin, after months of healing, then resembles the skin of a crocodile, which is the deity that they worship. Now, why I'm talking about ritual? Because apart from being the core of my current artistic practice with body and technology, it's also an interesting gateway to think about how different societies established criteria for normal bodies. What is a normal body? So a normal body is a body that follows some norms, some standards. In the case of the Kanigaras, it is normal, it is actually necessary to have this ritual performed on you in order to gain a certain position in society, in order to hunter, to get married, and so on. And it's interesting that this ritual, but also other rituals in general, happen to this combination of repetition, so continuous cutting, shock, which is also an emotional pressure, and pain, physical pain, but also psychological pain involved in submitting yourself into this process. Now, we have some other rituals these days, like filling your Facebook page. I don't know how many of you remembered when they did that. I didn't. I just found this image and I thought, oh yeah, how much time you spend filling your Facebook profile, if you have one. So, of course, here you can notice there is a divergence from a ritual that has to do directly with the body, has to do with animistic belief, into a ritual that has to do more with symbolic interactions. But still, platforms like Facebook and all the other social media that we participate in every day, regularly, they established our interaction with other people, so social interaction, and they also help reinforce what is normal. So, why I have a problem with normal? Well, because the definition of what is normal is established generally by those in power. Like history is the history of those who wins. And this is a great example. So it's a book called Aristotle's Masterpiece, or The Secrets of Generation. This book is not written by Aristotle, and it was published around the end of the 17th century, and it was published as a medical book. And as a medical book, it dictated the standards of how society thought about women and reproduction for 2 centuries. For 2 centuries, this book became the symbol and the knowledge of what a normal reproduction and a normal reproductive body is. Why this is problematic? Because most of the book was based on superstition and had nothing medical in it. As you can see from this picture here, so this is a woman, this is her child, and the illustration accompanied this idea that was disseminated as a medical discovery, that women who were subject to some kind of traumas or had nightmares at night during pregnancy would eventually give birth to tiny, small, monstrous, hairy child. People believed this for 200 years. It was sold all across US and UK mostly. And along with this kind of superstition disseminated as medical knowledge, as scientific knowledge, you can imagine what kind of standard for the body of a woman and the the pregnant body of a woman was established there. So this was the definition of power. Power establishing the definition of what is normal. So that's the problem with what is normal. What has to do this with us now? You may think, okay, we live in a bit better society than that. I don't think so, honestly. We just have different, more subtle ways to define what is normal using technology and according to power, again. So this is Erika. Is a robot, a humanoid robot, built by the guy in the background, who's a professor, Hiroshi Ishiguro. The professor of robotics at the Osaka University, is very much hyped in worldwide media and magazine. And because of this creation, and also of a previous robot that he created in his own image. Now, you can see this, we can all pretty much agree that it looks like a normal woman, but what is that definition of normality? It's a very young, charming, fascinating woman with super smooth skin and nice big lips and nice, almost surgically defined nose, built by a man. So that's the image of a man projected into the body of a robotic woman. And by doing this kind of project, what happens is that what is normal, in this case, what is normal for a body of a woman, get reinforced through technology, to the approach to technology, to the approach in science as well. And then it gets disseminated through the media. And that becomes culture. And that becomes what our kids learn and what we learn as well. So this is the problematic that I try to explore with my work. And I'm a performance artist. As I said, I work with body, technology, and sound. And what I try to do to tear apart this idea of normality, and especially the relation that this idea of normality has with technology, is to inhabit different alternative forms of embodiment. I try to create a tangible speculation of different bodies to be. And the reason I do that is because I believe that by creating this real speculation of different bodies, something can be triggered in the mind of the audience and also in my own as a performer And that trigger can open different gates onto ideas that are perhaps countercultural and definitely anti-normal. So in the past 4 years or so, I've been working on this project called 7 configuration. So a configuration is a concept that I developed in my PhD. I will not get much into it now, but is an assemblage, a getting together of human and machine in particular ways when they can be together. Like Erica is a form of configuration of man and machine. So I did a bunch of different works. There are 3 performances and installation, and I will show you some of these works. So the first one is Corpus Nil, which I refer to as a ritual of birth for an unknown body. So again, the idea of ritual is important to me because it serves to establish certain interaction in society, a certain belief. So I try to create performances that are somehow ritualistic, even if in a more symbolic way, but definitely in a very physical way. So I'll show you a small video of this. So here you may rightly ask, where is the technology? In fact, the technology itself is not the focus of my work, or at least I try not to make it so. So in this case, there is a lot of technology involved, but you can't really see it. The focus is on what kind of body results from a particular interaction between flash and circuits and software. So, that's an next thing. And so here I'm wearing 2 armband sensors, one for each arm. And these capture muscular activity. So one sensor captures the sound of muscle vibrating, a bit like a stethoscope. And the other sensor captures the electrical discharges that from the brain activate muscles. So as I move through this choreography, which is semi-improvised, I produce a certain muscular information. And this information is sent to a computer, which is off stage, you cannot see it. And the computer is running some kind of neural networks, so some algorithm that are programmed in a way to imitate at a basic level the way the synapses work. And this neural network produces the sound and the light that illuminate the body. So what happens is I cannot really control the music and the sound with my movement. I did that in the past for a long time and got a bit bored of it. But I rather can influence the musical choices of the software. And by influence, I mean the software produces a certain kind of sound, and if at some point the sound is too loud or too low, then I can try to move in a certain way, send certain signal to these neural networks that may be effective in producing a change. But I don't know if that will happen. And by doing this slowly, through the choreography as well, of course, this different kind of body emerges, which is not too human and not too animal, somewhere in between. Then the next work is Amygdala, which is an AI robot, pretty much like Erika, but it doesn't really look like her. And Amygdala is a robotic limb which is embedded with artificial intelligence. Here, by artificial intelligence, I mean, again, neural networks, but also another mechanism that's called reinforcement learning. At a basic level, I program the robot not to move in a certain way, but to perceive its own body and then generate movement. The only criteria that the robot has to generate movement is that it has to cut its own skin, pretty much like the very first image that I showed you in the ritual. So in order to do this, I'm collaborating with a laboratory of neurorobotics. Otherwise, it would be pretty hard to achieve this result by myself. I'm also working with a designer, with an engineer. So it's a communal effort. I think that's also important to specify how the transdisciplinarity of a certain practice can lead to strong moments of reflection. At least that's what I try to achieve. So amygdala for me is a performer itself. And that's also why you see me interacting with it. And it's fascinating how by using tools from humanoid robotics, you can create these machines that can learn, but it does not have any experience that it's learning. At the same time, it manifests a certain kind of intelligence. I would call it more computational intelligence, so that we understand it as something, a form of intelligence that is particular to this kind of machines and not an intelligence that is an imitation of the human one. I think that's also very important. And finally, we'll close with two works that are currently in progress, and they are the continuation of this. So the next one is Eingeweide. So it's a ritual of coalescence, I call it, when two things come together. And what happened here is that I perform together with another performer with amygdala attached to my body. And amygdala here performs the movement that it has learned when it's in an installation situation. And I try to choreograph the movement of the performance with the robot itself. And we can interact with physical interaction like in the video before, but we can also interact with muscular activity in a similar way that I showed you the earlier work. And again, this is just another form of an alternative embodiment that I explore. And it's a visual embodiment, but it's also a physical one and a physiological embodiment as well. The robot weighs 2 kilos, it's on my back, it's heavy, it moves on me. It does not have a knife, but it has this long tip. And so the speculation is not only a visual or sonic speculation, but it's a physical one. And it's again, for me as a performer and for the audience, it's about experiencing the existence of these possible different bodies by abusing technology a little. And so the final piece of the cycle, which is in progress currently, is Alia Tsutai. This is a project that we are developing between Berlin and Shanghai. So we'll be working with 3 performers, me and other 2 Chinese choreographers. And it's quite interesting because we will be working with these other 3 robotic prostheses embedded with artificial intelligence, and we will be doing that in China as well. Which is, if you don't know, it's quite interesting territory where to study and to explore the significance of this technology. Because as Yuk mentioned in the very first talk today, there is a very different understanding of technology in China as well as in other countries, that it's quite far, although in some parts converges with our, but it's good and it's important to admit and acknowledge that our way of thinking about technology is not the only one. So we're still working on this. These are just some trial pics. And as you can see here, we're trying to get the bare minimum out there. So if we really have to show the technology, then we're thinking, well, why don't we show it as it is, simply as a piece of metal and motors. Still don't know where this will go, but there will be a premiere in the end of the year in Berlin and Shanghai, so if you're around. So to conclude, of course, I don't claim that this understanding of technology is or should be a universal or a correct one, but I do believe that it's important, especially today, to use technology to tear apart, to destroy these ideas of normal and normality that it's so embedded and so damaging to our culture, at least in Western society. And to do that, I think it's equally important to understand that our own body is a hybrid. It always has been. It's even more, increasingly more today. And being a hybrid means that it's restless. It's never static, it's never fixed, and it's open. It can be different, and it should be. So, thank you.